Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing my first monthly wrap-up I've ever done. I wanted to do these last year and then I was in my reading slump, as I've talked about so many times. But I actually read a ton of books this month. Before we get into the actual video, there's two things I want to talk about before we dive in. First, I realized that in what I read in 2023, I didn't talk about what my reading goal for this year is. This year my reading goal is going to be 60. Last year was 65. I got less than half of that, but this year it's going to be 60. Also, this year I have decided I'm going to be using a combination of Goodreads and Storygraph. I have wanted to use Storygraph for a long time because the features are just next level on there and I just haven't gotten into it, and this year I have been consistently using it. Even though I've only been doing it for a month, I have been consistently using it, so my ratings will be more Storygraph based rather than Goodreads based. So there are half 0.25 and 0.75 stars instead of just 1 through 5. Let's get into the actual wrap up. I'm going to be doing full spoilers, full talking about these books. That's what I'm going to be doing for all wrap ups. So I will put the chapters at the bottom, so if you have not read some of these books, you can skip. Okay, let's just get into what I've read this month. So the first book I read is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I have had this book for so long. I have pulled it to read so many times and I just haven't done it. Nothing against the book. I don't know why, I just haven't picked it up. The most recent time I picked it up and didn't read it was for October. I was gonna read it during Halloween time because Cemetery Boys and it has to do with spirit, but I didn't. But this is the first book I picked up of the year. I read this book incredibly fast. I really liked the characters. I thought the storyline was really good. It's YA. It touches on Dia de los Muertos and different spirits and Brujex and different types of traditions like that. I really, really liked it. I really got into it. I found myself when reading this anytime there was a little bit of Spanish, I'm going to translate this. I'm not going to look it up because I've taken 7 years of Spanish, but I'm not the best at it. But I did love this book. I read it super fast. I really liked is she the god of the spirit, god of the dead, god of death? I really liked her. She is in it so minimal, but I liked the part she played in it. I liked the exploration of identity and gender, and I just really liked this. And it had a shockingly happy ending. I did not think that this was going to have a happy ending at all. I thought it had 0% chance of having a happy ending. I think this is a YA, and it had some of the kind of cringy high school kids, but it didn't overshadow it, and it wasn't enough where I was able to be yeah, I really like this book. I really like the characters. I did give this a 5. At the very end, there were parts where I'm it felt almost a little rushed, but I don't think it really affected how I felt about the book overall, and that's why I gave it a 5. I just really like this book. I think this book is so good. I know everyone says that. That's not that shocking of a thing. I think the characters were so lovable. So that is the first book I read in January. The second book I read is Circe by Madeline Miller. I have also had this book for a really long time. I either bought this at the exact same time I bought Song of Achilles or directly after reading Song of Achilles, and it once again has just sat there. I had picked it up I think once, and I was not in the right space. I was not in the space to be reading a more thought-provoking book where I have to genuinely think about these characters and what's happening, and I was looking for more just a silly goofy book. But I picked this up. Amazing. This book is so good. I thought that it was more similar to Song of Achilles, where it was more centered on a romance. I don't know why I had that idea, but I feel I heard that. So I was a little confused reading it, but obviously that didn't affect how I felt about the book. It was just a little bit confusing because I went into it thinking it was going to be more romance, Greek mythology romance, and it wasn't. And so that was a little confusing, but did not affect it because that was a me problem, not a book problem. But overall, I support Circe's rights and wrongs. I think that honestly she didn't do anything wrong, and the feminist take on Greek mythology was so good. I don't know, this has a contender to be a top tier book for me. I really, really liked it, and then the touch on motherhood, and it was just so good. It was amazing. And the way that Madeline Miller talked about the tragedies that were inflicted on Circe, and this isolation she was given, and the unfair treatment. I just think, I don't know. I gave this book a 5 stars. I feel that's not crazy from how I'm talking about it. I just think these Greek mythology retellings are so cool to me, even though I was never someone that was super into Greek mythology. I don't know why. I just like them so much. And this book was just written so well. And so yeah, that's all I have to say about Circe. Then the next book I read is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I didn't love this book. I went into this book actually not knowing much about it. I saw it being recommended everywhere. I knew it was a romance, and I wasn't that attached to the characters. To me, the characters felt unrealistic. I think that maybe if they were high schoolers, it might have been more realistic to me, but the fact they were like adults and they would do certain things or say certain things, I was like, I don't know. I just could not connect to these characters, and I could not believe this was, like, it's supposed to be realistic fiction. And I just didn't feel that. I could not connect. I felt like they were pretty immature, and I couldn't get over it. I really couldn't. I tried. And so I don't think the storyline was that bad, but also it was a fake dating trope and I couldn't connect, which is like, fake dating is like top tier for me, and it just wasn't. It didn't click. And that's been happening recently, so maybe I'm not liking fake dating as much, or maybe I don't know, not picking up the right books for me. But I did give this a 2.5. On Goodreads, I gave it a 3, so like I rounded it up, not down. I just really couldn't connect to the characters. I was just really not feeling it. I couldn't get into it. Next, I read The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. Or Wong. I thought the drawings in this book were so cute. I loved the relationships between the characters. I loved the support that one of the main characters gets at the end, even though he doesn't think he's gonna get it. I just thought this was such a cute little storyline. It was a super cute and easy read with adorable drawings and dialogue. I loved these two main characters. I think that they were super cute. I just really liked it. It was super easy. I did give it a 4 because it wasn't like my favorite thing ever, but I would recommend it. That's that. I digress. Okay, then the next book I read is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. I have had this book saved in my TikTok like saved videos for, I don't know, so long I can't even explain to you because of these two things, and I will read them to you. One is the dedication is for the kids who sharpen their teeth and bite, and I think that's awesome. And then this letter from the author. If you set a fire, you're going to inhale some smoke. I'm all for setting flames and burning whatever will catch flame, but I encourage you to be careful when you pour the kerosene. This book contains depictions of graphic violence, transphobia, domestic and religious abuse, self-injury, and attempted suicide. Hell Followed With Us is a book about survival. It's a book about queer kids at the end of the world trying to live long enough to grow up. It's a book about the terrible things that people do in the name of belief and privilege. So if any of these topics above will burn you, I respect your decision to step away. Actually, I admire you. I've never been so careful, but if you stepped even closer, close enough that you can feel the heat on your cheeks. I wrote this book for a few reasons. Because I wanted more stories about boys like me. Because I was angry. Because I still am. But mainly, I wanted to show queer kids that they can walk through hell and come out alive. Maybe not in one piece. Maybe change forever, but alive and worthy of love all the same. That's what you'll find here. Terrible things, survival, love, and a future worth fighting for. Sharpen your teeth, take up your fire, and let's do this. And I read that and I went, that sounds amazing. That sounds so good. Also, I've talked about this. I think there needs to be a bigger push on trigger warnings going at the beginning of books. And so that, this author putting that and him taking the time to write this little thing before the book, I think is very important and shows the care that went behind this book. And I think that you really see that throughout the book because it is like a horror gore book. For some reason, I didn't fully understand that even though I read that thing. And so that was very shocking to me. It was something I've never seen before, like a queer horror dystopian. And I've just never even seen that. And it was something I didn't know that I needed, but I did, and it was really good. And there were parts that were very gross because there is body horror and body gore, but I think that ultimately it's a dystopian, which most dystopians have a commentary on some social or political issues, but it's this dystopian that feels not that dystopian even though it has these literal non-human creatures in it. And I think it was done so well. I really liked it. It was a hard read. I'm not gonna say it wasn't a hard read. I did give it a 5 stars. Obviously, I have never read anything like it. Like I said 50 times. So I think just that creativity made me like it even more. And it just talked on some important stuff. So I like it and I recommend it. But for sure, don't read it if those trigger warnings will do too much for you. Then I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which is recommended everywhere. Everyone talks about this book. Everyone knows about this. Probably, if you're in the booktube, book talk space. Everyone loves the book. I had not read it yet. I haven't owned this for super long. I finally read it. I really liked it. Not to compare books that literally have nothing alike, but in popular YA series, I really do like this one more than the Inheritance Games, just because I like the characters better, and I also feel like since there is a little bit of romance, but it is very much secondary, and Pip's storyline and Pip's character development, and also Robbie's character development is much more important in this book than the romance. You actually don't see much of the romance besides in very small comments and little small times. I just really love this book. I gave it a 4.5 because I read it so fast and I really liked it. The comment I put is not realistic, but a slay nonetheless, and that's how I feel. This is not realistic fiction because this story is about a teenage girl who writes her cornerstone project on this murder and she solves it. So is that realistic? No. Do I care? Not at all. I love these characters. It was such a fast and easy read and I was like loving every second of it. So there's that. Then I read the second book of this series, that is Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. I liked this one less. This was my least favorite one. I don't love when there's like a mystery that you like literally can't solve, and so then yes, there's a twist, but you literally have no idea that you couldn't have solved it. You did not have this background information about one guy's dad was like a serial killer, and like you didn't have that background information, so you could have never guessed what was happening. I don't like when books do that, unless I missed something, which is always a possibility, but I just don't like when like the shock and the big twist is something you literally couldn't have predicted, because then it's not a big twist, because it's not a twist, it's just like a crazy piece of information you were given. So this one I did like the least. I still gave it a 3.5 because I like the characters, like I said, and I liked the whole beginning part of the book. It's just that end part was like, it wasn't a twist because no one could have predicted it. And I hope that makes sense. Then I read another Yona of the Dawn. I read volume 9. The only sentence I have is Yona in the crew slaying as always. So I don't really know exactly what happened in this book, but I did give it a 5. I really liked it. I think the vibes of it were good. I basically go on vibes. Then I read Yona of the Dawn volume 10, which I gave a 4.5 to, and this is because I think it's fun. So there's like a storyline, it's like Yona and the Happy Hungry Bunch or something, and they're like pretending to be bandits when really they're just protecting these villages and pretending to be like these bandits that took over the villages so that the main government can't come and take their stipends and their taxes, because these villages are very poor and they barely have food for themselves. I love that concept, but this book followed one of the government people I don't care about, and like yes, he had great character development in this book, I just didn't care about following him. And we got to see Yona a lot because that's where he was, but I just didn't really care about his storyline as much as I care about like the main crew storyline, so I did give it a 4.5. Then the last book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, I read As Good as Dead. I also gave this one a 4.5. I really liked this one. Once again, not super realistic. I don't care. Like I said, I really like the series and it's not realistic. I don't care. This is big spoiler, so if you want to skip ahead, not her literally committing murder, but I support her because the person she murdered is literally a kidnapper murderer and was going to murder her. So I support that act. I don't know. I support her. You know, I don't know if I support that action. I think that she could have handled it better for sure. 100%. But I did really like this book, and I think this series is a really good YA series. I'd recommend it. Everyone recommends it, but like I do really recommend it. I enjoyed reading it. I read it super fast. I think that's what most people say. Okay, then the next book I read is We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. Truth be told, I picked this book up for 2 reasons. One, this beautiful immaculate cover. And I also picked this book up because it was on the banned books table, and anytime I see a banned books table, I will be going to that table and I will be looking at it and I will be inspecting the books and seeing which ones I want to read. It's almost like they're giving me a TBR in itself. And so I did go and I read it, and the back sound very interesting to me because, here, I'll read just the beginning. There are a few things Henry Denton knows and a few things he doesn't. Henry knows that his mom is struggling to keep the family together and coping by chain-smoking cigarettes. He knows that his older brother is a college dropout with a pregnant girlfriend. He knows that he is slowly losing his grandma to Alzheimer's, and he knows that his boyfriend committed suicide last year. What Henry doesn't know is why the aliens chose to abduct him when he was 13. And he doesn't know why they continue to steal him from his bed and take him aboard their ship. He doesn't know why the world is going to end, or why the aliens have offered him the opportunity to avert the impending disaster by pressing a big red button. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a book I love. A sad book, aliens. It just seems very fun. But going into this book, I did genuinely think it was going to be different because it was a banned book. I thought that the tone would be different, but the tone is very much written by a teenage boy because that's what it is, right? You're following the main character and it's his thoughts, and so the tone is very much teenage boy. And so this whole time I'm like, no way these people have banned this book, which is how I feel about every book that's banned. But I just was like, okay, you guys are this pressed about this teenage boy. Yeah, in my little sentence I wrote, not the tone I expected at all, but such an interesting and well-written concept. And I stand by the fact, I think that this concept is very interesting, and I think following these characters that are definitely flawed and definitely they're not perfect. I mean, they're high schoolers, and then his family's not perfect. Like, no one is perfect, but I think following these flawed characters and this thought process he has of, should I save the world or should I not? And big spoiler, but at the end, he does get help for his mental health, which, very good. But you don't ever know if the aliens are real. And you don't ever know if the world ended, because half the people in his life didn't believe they were real, and half the people in his life did believe they're real. Even people he loved and loved him. And a lot of people were wondering if it was a manifestation of his mental health or many other things. And I think that that part of it is very interesting, and I think it shows how complex this character is, that you can be left and still be questioning, were these aliens real, or is this his mental health, or is this how he's coping with things? And I think ultimately for me, I think I do believe that aliens are real. I don't know if I believe that the world was really ending or if they were trying to do a social experiment on him. I have gone back and forth on if I believe this, though. I think that if he had started seeing the aliens after his boyfriend had committed suicide, I would be more leaning towards the fact that they weren't real. But I think since he was already having that, and not to say he wasn't having enough stress at home with his dad and his mom and his brother and his family in general, but I just don't know. I think they could be real and they could not be, and I genuinely don't know, and the author isn't going to say. And I kind of like when authors do things like that, because when you build a complex character, I think it is kind of important to let people garner and create their own opinions about these characters. And yeah, so that's it. So I would recommend this book. I gave this a 4.75. The parts, because basically at the end you learn that this was him doing this writing project. The parts where he was writing different times the world could end, I was a little, I don't know, they weren't my favorite parts ever. Some of them I liked and some of them I was like, eh. So yeah, I gave it a 4.75, but very good book. I would recommend it. Then I read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I have owned this book forever, literally forever, like at least 2-3 years. I don't even know how I'm gonna get through talking about this book. It's so good. It's literally so good. Literally, the sentence I wrote is single mother parenthood, single mother parenthood, single mother parenthood. This book is very interesting. The commentary on Shaker Heights and these rich privileged people and how they feel that they've created this like utopian city, and like the things they do behind the scenes or the things they do in public that maybe doesn't feel like that utopian inclusive city. And I think that that was very interesting. But I do genuinely, the most important part of this book for me was Pearl and Mia's relationship. Like Mia loving her daughter so much she would do anything for her, and at first you think that maybe that's not the truth, maybe that's not what she's doing, and maybe she's being selfish, and you just see through the end and through this whole book how much Mia loves Pearl and how much she loves helping the people around her. Like the amount of connection she created in this town in this few couple weeks, I think is just and I need to read a few things to you guys, because I was reading and I was like, yeah, we'll need to talk about this. After Pearl had begun to snore softly, Mia kept her hand in place, as if she were a sculptor shaping Pearl's shoulder blades. She could feel Pearl's heart, ever so faintly, beating under her palm. It had been a long time since her daughter had let her be so close. Parents, she thought, learned to survive touching their children less and less. As a baby, Pearl had clung to her. She'd worn Pearl in a swing, because whenever she'd set her down, Pearl would cry. There'd scarcely been a moment in the day when they had not been pressed together. As she got older, Pearl would still cling to her mother's leg, then her waist, then her hand, as if there were something in her mother she needed to absorb through the skin. Even when she had her own bed, she would often crawl to Mia's in the middle of the night and burrow under the old patchwork quilt, and in the morning they would wake up tangled, Mia's arm pinned beneath Pearl's head, or Pearl's legs thrown across Mia's belly. Now as a teenager, Pearl's caresses had become rare. A peck on the cheek, a one-armed, half-hearted hug, and all the more precious because of that. It was the way of things, Mia thought to herself, but how hard it was. The occasional embrace, a head leaned for just a moment on your shoulder, when what they really wanted more than anything was to press them to you and hold them so tight you fused together and could never be taken apart. It was like training yourself to live on the smell of an apple alone. when what you really wanted was to devour it, to sink your teeth into it, consume it, apples, core, and all. Shut up. Shut up. Anything about motherhood will get me. Literally, give me anything about motherhood, it will get me. Like, this is crazy. And like, as someone who was super close to my mom, as someone who was raised by a single mom, I was like, shut up. Shut up. And I think this is written so well. And yeah, I have more. We have to read, okay? We're just doing a little reading session. Just don't mind me. Mia had held her for a moment, buried her nose in the part of Pearl's hair. Every time she did this, she was comforted by how Pearl smelled exactly the same. She smelled, Mia thought suddenly, of home, as if home had never been a place, but had always been this little person who she carried alongside her. Oh my god. You are kidding me. And like, first of all, that is such a sweet thing to say in general, but like the fact that these are two people who move all the time, and so they don't have a set place, a set home, and for her to be like, oh, home has always been who I've carried with me, and it's her daughter. I just can't. I just can't, okay? Then I have the last little thing I want to say. Okay, then I think this in the letter from Celestine really sums up, like, the book. Like many places in our country, Shaker Heights is full of idealistic, altruistic people of all races who are good at heart and sincerely want to do the right thing. Yet when personally affected by the issues, even idealists often end up making selfish choices with far-reaching effects. It's human nature, yet I wanted to explore how and how often we justify it to ourselves when we cross moral lines. Where do we follow the rules, and where do we justify breaking them? Do our past determine what we deserve in the future? And is it ever possible to leave your past behind? These are some of the questions I hope the novel raises. And it does. It really does. And I cannot recommend this book enough. And this is such a highly praised book, and I am so behind on this recommending train whatever. The characters, the intricacies of like the characters and their thoughts and their feelings and the writing, just so good. Just so good. Now we're on to the last book I read this month. That is She Gets the Girl by Rachel Lippincott and Allison Derrick. At first I had a little bit of a difficult time like connecting with the characters just because I don't know why, I just did. But after like getting like 25% through, I like read it so fast because in my mind it just started feeling like a YA rom-com movie. Like it was just genuinely such a YA rom-com movie, like a Netflix movie, like To All the Boys I Loved Before movie. And is that because I just watched it? Maybe. Is it because I just love that movie? Maybe. But I did start really loving it, and I was like, okay, do I love these characters like the most ever? No, but I really do like this book, and so I did give it a 4. And I think, I don't know, it just really like translated into that movie format for me in my head. I don't know how or why or what specifically, but it just really did. And so I just really like that book. I don't have anything like super intense to say about it. I know I went on a really long rant about the last book, but I think that is all for this book. With all of that, I read 13 books this month. A lot of books, way too many. Don't think I'm gonna have other months where that's going to happen, because part of it was because half of this month I didn't have school because I was on winter break, and so I had a lot of time to read. But also I just am back into reading, which has been very nice. I have gone through a large chunk of the books I've had on my physical TBR for so long, which feels great. I hate having so many I hadn't read was like stressing me out. Like the overconsumption of books I was like participating in was like literally giving me so much anxiety, and so wanting to read again has been great, and like cutting down on the number of books has also been lovely. But I think that's about it. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment some book recommendations down below if you have any based on like what I've said about certain books, and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm going to keep doing these monthly wrap-ups. Hopefully I keep reading enough books that they are interesting. I will then also throw in like some vlogs and some more of my like read some books I should have already read, because I put out my first one and I hope you guys have liked it. I'm so sorry it's super long, but I couldn't cut it down anymore. Also, here's this cute little graphic my mom made for my little wrap-up. It's so cute, and I just like it. I like it, and it's super fun. That's going to be about it, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye guys!